Detours, brought to you by Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. With 19 years of coaching experience, Evan Enquist has certainly left an indelible mark on collegiate wheelchair tennis world when he rallied the University of Alabama to 7 consecutive national titles. While pairing his winning attitude with a PhD in exercise physiology, Enquist became a natural fit in his role as national manager of USTA wheelchair tennis. Hey, Evan, welcome. And hey, that's quite a run you had there, 7 in a row. Are you impressed by yourself?
Hey Bob, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it sounds impressive when you read it off like that. Absolutely, but yeah, no, it definitely was an incredible 7. I had 8 seasons total with the Crimson Tide there at Alabama, and the only of those 8 years, the only year we didn't win was when it was COVID year and we didn't have it. So it was a pretty amazing run.
So the first year, if I'm not mistaken, was 2012, correct?
So it was a little bit later. So I think 2015 was the first year that kind of started.
Okay.
And I was their kind of head coach through 8 seasons total, 2015 through 2023.
2023. Okay, so with the collegiate programs, we've done a lot of digging around and found out that the collegiate world is really starting to grow in its support of adaptive sports in general, but tennis has become pretty huge. So when you think back to 2015 when you were really getting going there, what were the philosophical changes that you started to see within the university, the administration, the attitude towards the adaptive sports program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, going back to when I started to get involved in 2015, there were only kind of a few, maybe 3 or 4 flagship programs that had kind of a really great provider, a champion on campus who really wanted to see that sport happen. And the most of the infrastructure was built for wheelchair basketball. A lot of teams, maybe 12 to 14 teams, different universities. And there's only a couple in tennis, University of Arizona, Alabama had been around for several years, and previously a couple that started wheelchair tennis at the college level had kind of disappeared for those graduating athletes, or maybe that provider left. So it was really only a couple athletes. The first year I became involved in the national championships, we had 3 teams competing total at the wheelchair national championships 2015. So it definitely has come a very long way, like you mentioned. But I think one of the major steps that was taken, that I felt was a huge part of the change in kind of that circumstance and the interest was getting involved with the USTA. I realize that's my role now, but back then I was just volunteering, helping out with some other projects, and got kind of connected with Jason Harnett, who I believe you've spoken to in the past. And we we really wanted to do something special and make the collegiate national championships really have a lot of value. Previously, everyone did a great job, but you'd get a few $1,000s. Every campus would kind of raise their hand. Hey, do you want to host it? Do I want to host it? Uh, sure, you take it this year. We'll do it next year. And they did the best with the resources they had, and I played that role in 2015 and 16. But in 2017 is when USTA said, you know what, let's take this event, let's bring it to Orlando, let's bring it to the national campus, and let's host a national championships and really put some energy into this and kind of have that big carrot for schools to want to compete all year to make it to nationals. And that was definitely when some of this progress started.
Are you pretty intrigued that when you look at the number of college programs? Just checking it out: SDSU, San Diego State, University of Illinois, Auburn, Alabama, as you well know, Ball State, Indiana, Michigan. Are you amazed, surprised, or did you just think that this could really happen? That one day that adaptive sports would work its way into the college world the way it has academically and athletically?
Yeah, I think I was a believer very early at what these programs meant. I saw very early on what it meant to the athletes, what it meant for access to education with those with disabilities, and I played college tennis. I absolutely loved my experience. I mean, there nothing beats showing up one day and there being a fresh kit of uniforms in your locker. I mean, that was just some of my core memories as being an athlete in college. And so, as soon as I started seeing that develop and happen for our wheelchair athletes, um, I was a believer, and I knew this was something that would grow. And if a program decided to do it, they would fall in love with it and invest. And so, I think I personally was trying to get involved and mentor other programs and push the best I could. But I do think it is grown beyond what I expected and the rate at what I expected, in the sense that there are teams that we've never heard of, either, in the college realm, or, maybe now in my role as a manager, where I'm still having a lot of these consultations with different universities. But then we'll hear word of a coach with four athletes, like a good example is Cincinnati this year. We found out about 3 months prior that, hey, we have four athletes, we have a coach, we have an infrastructure, we have funding, we'll be at nationals, see you in 3 months. And things like that are starting to happen organically, which is really amazing to hear.
During your tenure with Alabama, did you feel more like in the beginning that you had to push your agenda to the administrators to get more resources for your program and sell your I mean, were you constantly selling your program? And at what point did you feel like the administration started to come to you and go, wow, we're seeing some really good results here. Let's invest more into these programs. Where did that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think, I was in a really a sweet spot time when I kind of arrived and showed interest in the program, because the semester before I arrived, the current director and associate director, Brent Harden and Margaret Strand, they were really overseeing the basketball and the department. They had the foresight that they wanted to grow into a department, not just have a couple basketball teams as their kind of flagship. And so they chose to allocate some resources and hire a part-time coach, who was a local coach who kind of worked in the area, and kind of start an investment and start, giving a little bit of money. I think they started with about $8,000. That was like the initial budget, which is a
Wow,
nice start
that's
budget.
not much.
It's not much, but it was great at the time.
Yeah,
And
seed
so,
money.
it was around that time, and I kind of watched as a volunteer, and she started showing up, and that's when I first experienced the sport, just helping out with a couple practices, a couple days a week. And um, I think they had already kind of made that investment. When I took over, I did have a vision of what a Division 1 called collegiate athlete experience looks like.
Mhm.
And so I think there were.
As you played tennis with Drake.
Correct, correct. And I think, so I kind of had a model in my head on what that, what that looked like and what the athletes deserved and the amenities and the support system that they needed. And so I think, as over time, I definitely brought that energy in, and tried to continue to push to make improvements every year with, hey, let's add some more strength conditioning, let's add support services, let's add better equipment, better uniforms, partnerships with the varsity courts and the varsity coaches to try to get access to indoor time when the weather was poor. And so it definitely was, kind of looking back, a very fun challenge. But it definitely, took some internal pushing to really get that message across. But I think it was mostly met with support, and I was given the freedom to, if they couldn't do it, if they couldn't make it happen, or financially, I was given the freedom to go find it, go find some money, go find the resources that I needed to continue to progress.
We'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Sports and Spokes Magazine. For nearly 50 years, they've produced stories on iconic athletes performing at the top of their game, given generational coverage of sports dating back to the 1970s, and they've shown the way with exciting and timeless magazine cover shots. To stay on top of all the latest news from the world of high performance adaptive sports, go to sportsandspokes.com. Sports and Spokes, the magazine for wheelchair sports and recreation. So, Evan, with your background in exercise physiology and knowing what you know and being a tennis player, having met the adaptive athlete and learning more about what their quest was and how they went about things, what do you think that you learned from them?
Oh, I mean, everything. They, I had never really interacted with the adapted sports world prior to arriving in Alabama. Now, I think what really helped me foundationally was my background, of course, in tennis, but really I did my master's in strength conditioning, and strength conditioning was something I loved and was a really big part of my education. But bringing that kind of mindset in when I started meeting athletes and we started talking about, um, the different movements on court and different strength areas and muscles that were functioning, muscles that weren't functioning, different balance issues, I was really able to kind of rely a little bit on that. I was like, okay, let's talk about muscle function and what works, what doesn't work. We had no strength conditioning at the time that was organized. And, I was working on my PhD. I'd had some background. I was like, I'll do it. So, 2 or 3 days a week, we actually went into the student rec center with all the student body and, had the fun experience of waiting on equipment and, doing that whole dance. But that was super fun for me because while I didn't know wheelchair tennis yet, I got to learn the world of disability and how to kind of work on muscle function and work on these different training adaptations that help in tennis. And then the athletes, of course, taught me what it means to be a wheelchair user, everyday life, as well as on the court. And then, the first athlete, Shelby Barron, who was recruited full time to be the first full time wheelchair tennis athlete at Alabama, was recruited that same year that I took over as head coach. And so, as a tremendous player, is already on the Paralympic path, she really taught me the game of wheelchair tennis.
What do you see as the prominent issues moving forward with the academic, athletic, collegiate world all pairing together?
Oh, you know, it's a really good question. I think there's a lot of interest in doing something special on campuses. The collegiate world in general has been turned upside down every year. It feels like with NIL and just different aspects of college funding, some of the challenges of funding athletics, and specifically in the tennis world, being an individual sport or definitely a sport that just doesn't usually bring in funds to the university. We've lost a lot of able-bodied tennis programs throughout the country, and that's been a big challenge. And so, so I think in some ways, adding adapted sports could, very much less cost, fill some of that gap and provide more athletes an opportunity to train. But we also run up against universities who are trying to use every bit of their funding to bring back those sports that they lost. And so maybe something like adding a brand new wheelchair tennis team is maybe not high on their agenda because they're trying to bring back their men's and women's program that they lost and have a massive alumni base for. And so I think depending on the campus, there's definitely some opportunities. And even in my conversations with the ITA, the Intercollegiate Tennis Association, that now has taken governance over both wheelchair, all able-bodied tennis, and now includes wheelchair. Um, they are very interested in how our college campuses can be more community oriented, maybe changing that model of, hey, our facilities are varsity athletics. Sorry, we'll hit you with a big bill if you want to use them. And kind of changing that mindset to, well, how do we fill our facilities? How do we get the most out of them? And how do we include the community? And so I think that trend is really positive for the future of collegiate adaptive sports.
So what did Jason see in you as an individual, as a coach, as someone who is knowledgeable and well, obviously those 7 straight wins didn't hurt anything, but what did he see in you when he brought you into the national program?
Good question. I'd love to hear his answer, of course, after I give mine. But I think I think he saw some commonalities in our paths and our traits. Me being an able-bodied coach first, coaching college stand-up tennis at the D3 level, and I got to my final year of playing at Drake University. I got to be a student assistant coach, so I had a lot of coaching background, and I think that he saw that similarity. And I think I quickly became, in a very short amount of time, somebody who was extremely active in the community. Many people in the adaptive sports world, as you know, maybe do it once a week, maybe once a month, depending on what their structure is or their, full-time job is. But I was put in a very special position where it was my full-time job after a few years of doing it as a combo and some for free, some paid, and then I worked my way towards a full-time head coach for wheelchair tennis. I was doing it every day, and so I was hosting tournaments and programming, and then it didn't take long for me and Jason to start having chats about playing, about coaching, about 9 or 10 o'clock, all his kids went to bed, and we'd pick up the phone and have chats for a couple hours each night. And so I think that relationship turned into a friendship, and then a position became open at the company 2 years ago, about 2 years ago since when I started, and he called me and asked me to apply.
Well, Evan, you are bringing very winning ways to the program. It's really exciting time for not only wheelchair tennis but adaptive athletes in general. The Paralympics are just around the corner. Thank you very much. It's been great talking to you today, and I look forward to hearing your impressions after LA in 2028.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.